Hello humans, I'm Yoshiller, and today I'm going to be doing something a little different. In case you don't know, I'm a big fan of the video game theorist MatPat, who is famous for his online show known as Game Theory. Never before have I seen someone take such ridiculous video game ideas and convey them to me in such interesting ways so that I would believe them. I gotta admit, I'm impressed. Mr. MatPat here has conveyed that humans are Pokemon, that all video game worlds are linked, and that Dr. Eggman is faster than Sonic the Hedgehog. He has taken some of the most ridiculous ideas and persuaded me into believing them with his entertaining commentary and editing. Somebody give this guy an award. However, his most recent episode of Game Theory made me feel as though I should respond to his, well, theory. Now don't get me wrong, I have nothing against Mr. MatPat. Like I just said, I value his work. I'm impressed. But his latest video entitled "The Wii U is the New Virtual Boy" has made me feel as though there is some information in his video that may be, inaccurate to say the least. And before you guys say anything, I even asked him if it was okay for me to make a response video. He replied by saying, "Please do." Smiley face. Now, I'm no game theorist, I'm no economist, and I'm no game designer. At least, not yet. But I know my fair share of video game knowledge. I've made all sorts of video game videos, and I've made a few analysis videos before. With this recent topic of Nintendo failure, I can't help but give my say-so on the subject. Maybe it's my inner Nintendo fanboy wanting to speak out. Maybe it's my zodiac sign of a Libra wanting to balance the argument. But I should say that the Wii U is not a repeat of the Virtual Boy. Sure, they hold similarities, but I wouldn't say that they were exactly the same. And here's why. Mr. MatPat, sir, you've claimed that the Wii U failed for the exact same reasons as the Virtual Boy, but is that really true? While it's obvious that the Wii U is not the hot system seller that Nintendo was hoping to release, it is evident that the Wii U may be failing for reasons that are more complex than just a short battery life and a small game library. What is true about your comments, though, is that your comments are applicable to the launch of the Wii U. Bear in mind, the Wii U launched 1.5 years ago. So the better question is, why is it still a flop? There's a few reasons here, but before I dive into them, I'll need to compare these ideas to a more successful Nintendo product in recent times, like the Nintendo 3DS. And hey, if anything, the Nintendo 3DS is more like the Virtual Boy than the Wii U is. After all, these are both handhelds and they both utilize the 3D function. But why did the 3DS succeed? If you recall, the Nintendo 3DS didn't have that great of a launch either. Its library of games was pretty short for long periods of time. True, there were games released now and again, like The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time 3D, and Cave Story, but what is important to note is that a lot of the early Nintendo 3DS games didn't really make too great of a use for the system. Launch games included either smaller games like Bust a Move Plus, or were remakes of earlier games like Rayman 3D and Super Street Fighter IV Turbo Edition. While there were new games that greatly utilized the functions of the Nintendo 3DS, such as Pilot Wings and Nintendogs, these games aren't exactly system sellers. Other games either just used the 3D as a gimmick or didn't use it at all. The 3DS was quite a flop in the beginning, but Nintendo managed to turn it around. Nintendo President Satoru Iwata refused to fire his employees to compensate for the poor sales, and instead, he took a price cut, and a hefty price cut at that. Additionally, he decided to drop the price of the Nintendo 3DS by $70, and players that had already purchased a Nintendo 3DS would be entitled to 20 ambassador games. Nintendo then began pumping out all sorts of games for the system. We got Super Mario 3D Land, Mario Kart 7, Kid Icarus Uprising, Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games, the list goes on. If you want me to name some third-party stuff, we also got Tales of the Abyss, Resident Evil Revelations, Sonic Generations, and many, many more. The 3DS, like the Wii U, can also be considered a gimmick, but it was a gimmick that appealed to developers. There was more than just the 3D functionality. Whether it was an old concept or a new concept, the 3DS could utilize features such as Street Pass, download play, dual screens, touch controls, gyro controls, camera functionalities, and many other features. Come 2012, Nintendo was rocking and rolling with the Nintendo 3DS, and they still are. They've released Animal Crossing, Pokemon, Zelda, A Link Between Worlds, and many other games. Surely there's something for everybody. But the Wii U performed similar actions and did not gain the same success. While the handheld market and the console market are obviously two completely different markets, the same ideal still applies. Nintendo tried to turn the Wii U around, and they failed. The Wii U actually had a pretty good launch. Sure, a lot of the games at the system's launch were available on other systems, but that doesn't mean that the launch games for the Wii U were bad. Sure, the Wii U is a gimmick, but just because there's a second controller doesn't mean it has to focus on asymmetric gameplay. That's just something you can do. You don't have to do it. For example, when the Nintendo DS first came out, many developers were unsure as to what to do with two screens. But when the touchscreen began being used as a map or as an options menu, people felt that this idea was perfect for games. Similarly, the Wii U gamepad acts as a second screen, and instead, it's for a console. For example, The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD uses the gamepad as a way to rearrange items. Zombie U uses it as a way to swap items. The gamepad also has motion controls, camera functionality, touch control, near-field communication, and many more features. But apparently, none of these features are interesting enough to game developers. Then, other games just allow the gamepad for off-TV play. New Super Mario Bros. U did this. Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed did this. Super Mario 3D World did this. The Wii U gamepad doesn't have to be used for gimmicky touchscreen controls. Developers know this, but why are they shying away? Well, it could be for other reasons. I'll touch on that in a moment. And what about the battery life of the Wii U gamepad? Yeah, it's pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie, but various games on the Wii U allow support for the game without the need of a tablet. You can still play using a Wii remote. Oh, you don't have one? Okay, then play with the gamepad hooked up to your charger. Can't do that? Okay, then you go spend some more money. And like the 3DS, the Wii U did experience a price drop. Although the 3DS had a heftier price drop with $70, the Wii U still had a price drop of $50, and bundles can be purchased with games such as The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker HD, Zombie U, and New Super Mario Bros. U. But this didn't exactly rack up the sales, did it? Sure, it must have helped, but it wasn't enough help. So let's take a few steps back. Is the Wii U just bad? Why don't developers want to develop for it? Well, Mr. MatPat, you compared the Wii U to the Virtual Boy, and you explained that the Virtual Boy had rushed technology. But rushed technology doesn't mean incomplete technology. It can, but it doesn't guarantee it. Let me put it to you this way. You can play a Virtual Boy, right? Do the games freeze? Is a controller missing a button? Then it's not incomplete necessarily. It's just a game system that doesn't live up to your expectations. If something is in development and is being released at a certain time, you don't want to delay it. It costs more to delay something than it does to take something out of it. You can delay a product, Nintendo's done it before, but it's not necessarily advised because it is an expensive decision. So the Virtual Boy was released for what it was, and it just didn't excite people as much as expected. Same thing with the Wii U, but the Wii U is a powerful console still. It's just not what people expected. Saying that the Wii U is incomplete and that the Virtual Boy is incomplete is a bit of a stretch. The Virtual Boy is more so true, but the Wii U is not incomplete. It's just not up to expectations of the gamer. I'll touch on this more in a moment. Another issue with the Virtual Boy was that it was shoehorned out into the market at a bad time. The Nintendo 64 was soon to be released, so Nintendo had to focus their efforts on that game system, since it was more advanced, had a higher budget, and was sure to have a higher demand. As such, the Virtual Boy was left there in the dust, and other companies just didn't want to develop for it. But that's mainly because the Nintendo 64 was coming out, and developers figured that they could just develop for that. But the Wii U isn't in the way of another console. It is the other console. Nintendo's not pushing something else onto the market, so what gives? Well, it's a multitude of other things. But let's compare the Virtual Boy some more, shall we? Now, you also stated, Mr. MatPat, that Nintendo wanted control over games that were released for the Virtual Boy. This is true, but it's not the first time that Nintendo has done this. Nintendo, for the most part, also had control over what games were released onto the NES, the SNES, and the Nintendo 64, and coincidentally, these were all cartridge-based systems. Nintendo pretty much owned these cartridges, and they could license a company to produce a game for the console, but the only way for them to produce a game was to go through Nintendo and get one of those cartridges. At least, this was the legal way of doing it. Either way, this gave Nintendo full control. Nintendo pretty much does the opposite now. With the Wii U, Nintendo doesn't do cartridges anymore, and they allowed indie developers to release games onto the eShop. Nintendo has loosened up their policies, and they are trying to allow as many people to develop for their console as possible. However, this time around, companies just don't want to develop for the poor thing. And why is that? Well, Mr. MatPat, you stated that companies didn't want to devote time to make a completely different game for a console and instead wanted to make a ton of money as quickly as possible. As sad as this is true. However, developers have claimed that developing for the Wii U is just as easy as developing for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, and that speculators were providing false information about the speculations of the console. So ideally, it wouldn't be too hard to bring a game over to the Wii U. And, like I said earlier, who says that you have to make a use of the gamepad functionality? For all anyone cares, you could probably just have off TV play, or if that's too difficult, then put a pretty picture on it and call it a day. But that's not really luring developers, is it? Here's what really makes a game company tick. Game companies want to make money, sure, and they want to release a game onto a console where they can be assured that the game will earn them a profit. With the poor sales of the Wii U, developers have strayed away from the console, and because the developers have strayed away from the console, that means there's no games for it. And because there's no games for it, that means that nobody is willing to buy it. Thus, a loop occurs, and it becomes a giant hamster wheel with the game developers being the hamster. But not all hope is lost. There are certainly some great games that are available for the Wii U. There's Super Mario 3D World, there's Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, there's Pikmin 3, there's The Wonderful 101, there's Lego City Undercover, and there's many more to come like Bayonetta 2, Super Smash Bros., Mario Kart 8, and many, many more. But that's another thing. There's more to come, and there are great games that aren't here yet. As opposed to the Virtual Boy, a lot of games just got canceled. These games just aren't out yet. Nintendo has made some great games for their system. I'd even go as far as to say that they've made games that have outclassed their Wii and GameCube games. But the games that have been released onto the Wii U have been released so scarcely. People like Shigeru Miyamoto even said that they underestimated the power of an HD video game and that the production costs were more than they thought. Due to these miscalculations, Nintendo has put more money into making a game than they've gotten out of it. And due to this, Nintendo can't make games as quickly, so it ultimately just becomes an ultimate money drain. And Nintendo doesn't like to rush their games, this is common knowledge. They sometimes even see the games of other consoles as incomplete, and the last thing they want to do is follow the same course of action. So their determination to make great games is awesome for us, but it costs them a lot of money. And this loss of money really hurts when Nintendo doesn't have other companies to back up their profits. And that's why the Wii U didn't have as big of a turnaround as the Nintendo 3DS. Nintendo miscalculated and underestimated what they were doing. Sure, the Virtual Boy had its fair share of miscalculations, but the Wii U's faults are different from the Virtual Boy's. While they both share poor qualities such as short battery life and slow release dates, the causes of these consoles are different, and as such, the results are different. It's not that developers don't want to take the time to make a different type of game for the Wii U, it's that they don't want to risk making a game on a platform that won't sell well. It's not that the Wii U doesn't have a library of games, it's that each game is great, but Nintendo needs to spend more time making each one, and that costs them too much. And as such, games are released more scarcely. And Mr. MatPat, I'm not saying that you're wrong, I'm just saying that there's more to it than you think. The Virtual Boy and the Wii U do have similarities, but the Wii U has been failing for different reasons. So if the Virtual Boy was supposed to predict the Wii U's future, then perhaps the Virtual Boy didn't give all of the details. Now, all of that being said, the Wii U can still pull through. Nintendo's not ready to shovel it aside as they do have games coming for it. But, like you also said in your video, Nintendo needs some luck here. Somebody needs to come in and show people that it is fine to develop for the Wii U, and if that is done, others will hopefully follow. And fans need to be persuaded and willing to buy a Wii U, because in the end, the success of any console is determined by the happiness of the fans. If the fans are happy, then Nintendo will be happy and everybody will be happy. But hey, who am I to say? You're the game theorist, Mr. MatPat, sir, and that's just my theory. Okay, I'm not gonna steal your quote without your permission, but you get the idea. Anyway, thanks for watching, and thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to give my say-so on this unfortunate subject. That wraps up this video, humans, and I'd like to thank you all for watching. I assure you guys that the Wii U has potential. I guess it's just taking longer to shine, and it just hasn't shined yet. But I'm a strong Nintendo fan, and I truly hope that we will one day see success in the Wii U.